everyone. You're tuned in to Fired Up Conservative Talk. I'm William del Pilar, loud, proud, unapologetic conservative Latino. We're not unicorns, folks. We're the growing base the media pretends isn't even here. Tonight, we're not here to massage anybody's narrative. We're ripping the mask off the spin and dragging the real story onto the table. We're going to start with the tale that will make Tom Cruise green with envy. Then we'll move on to the State of the Union and Trump's sayback. That State of the Union basically turned into an election integrity street fight. Trump walks out with a 51% approval, huge online numbers, and a bill that still can't get past a 60 vote Senate wall. So let's get to it. First, I want to tell you a tale of legendary proportions that the whole world finally got to see, but some where I live in my neck of the world already knew. And that is 100-year-old Escondido Top Gun finally gets his Medal of Honor. Escondido is actually where I own my very first house. It's right down the road from me. And our panel, we all live in and out around that area. So Royce Williams is a local kid. I wouldn't say he's a local kid. He's a 100-year-old Navy fighter pilot from Escondido, and he was honored at Trump's State of the Union and awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for a 1952 Korean War dogfight that was classified and buried for decades. He was flying the F-9 F-5 Panther off the USS Oriskany. Williams was jumped by 7 Soviet MiG-15, and that ended up in a 35-minute dogfight. I want you to think about this for 1 second. As a diver, I've experienced this on the wrong end sometimes, where I only have a few minutes of air left, but I've got about 10 minutes left to go, with the dive. Or you given a speech and you have 10 minutes to give the speech, you write out your notes, and in 2 minutes you're done. It's when the clock goes to zero and doesn't move. In fact, the clock just doesn't move. That's a dogfight. An aerial dogfight will last approximately 40 seconds to 2 minutes. This was a 35-minute dogfight. Think of that. He shot down 4 MiGs and still managed to bring his jet home with roughly 260 plus bullet holes in it. It was a 7-1 dogfight. Talk about ganging up on somebody. It's an air combat story that's become Top Gun level legend, told to today's pilots and cadets. For 70 years, everybody knew the legend of that one Panther against a sky full of MiGs, but almost nobody knew the name Royce Williams until now. Nobody knew who this real life maverick was. His battle was kept top secret for decades because it involved direct combat with Soviet pilots. Remember, World War II had ended a few years earlier, and we were beginning the Cold War. Good versus evil. The US against the Soviet Union. Stalin against every president that came until the end of the Soviet Union. So only after declassification and the long push led by locals and my Representative Daryl Issa, did Williams finally get the Medal of Honor at age 100. Issa actually has a great quote: "Valor has no expiration." The kind of real life maverick moment every young kid dreams of. And good and well Tom Cruise dreams about it, but almost no one ever lives, was discovered this past week at the State of the Union. So how did the dogfight start? Well, once again, November 1952, cold, frigid waters. A 26-year-old Lieutenant E. Royce Williams launches an F-9 F-5 Panther from the USS Oriskany with 3 other jets to intercept 7 Soviet MiG-15 coming out of Vladivostok. Now you're thinking, oh, okay, 3-7. Wow, that's a tough fight. Mechanical issues forced the 2 US jets back to the carrier and a third to peel off. Now, when I researched this, I was like, this is odd. You're never alone up there. There's always a wingman. Well, the peel off, that was Royce Williams' wingman, Lieutenant J.G. Dave Rowlands, and he was likely chasing a smoking MiG that Williams had already hit before losing contact and having to return in bad weather. Now, before you think, oh, he ran off, that was kind of protocol. You chase the bad guy, make sure he's out of the fight so he can't come back. Now, this JG, just real quick, Dave Rowlands, he was probably early 20s, probably between the ages of 21 to 24. So a young kid, so inexperienced, and he was following protocol at the time, but he was gone because from that point on, Royce Williams is battling alone against 6 hostile MiGs, having already shot one, with no wingman and no way to just turn and run. As the MiGs roll in, the carrier orders Williams and the wingman, Roland, to disengage and return. Kind of reminds me of Big John when I was battling one of his cohorts on the Libertarian. And I was getting ready to pounce on them, and Big John's like, "Do not engage! Do not engage!" I could just picture the carrier, "Do not engage and turn back." But Williams radioed back, "It's too late. I'm engaging, and not by choice. I'm fighting for my life." So, in essence, Roland starts as Williams' wingman in that 7-ship MiG formation. But when William hits one, Roland chases the smoking bandit down toward the sea to finish it, and he burned his ammo. So then, once he broke off and returned, he was pretty much a spectator. And then, with bad weather, once they both broke off, they lost sight of one another, and Roland returned back to the ship. So, the fight itself, Williams got into what's now considered the longest dogfight in U.S. Navy history. Again, around 30 to 35 minutes of continuous high G maneuvering and gun passes. Again, realize most aerial dogfights are about 45 seconds to 2 minutes. And here's the kicker: his Panther was slower and less agile than the MiG 15s. It was superior technology he was facing. As he put it, quote, "They had me cold on maneuverability and acceleration. The only thing I could do was outturn them," unquote. So in essence, he was zigging and zagging to save his life the whole fight. He was constantly turning into each attack. So he would turn into the attack and fire when the plane crossed his nose. He stayed in until his ammo was gone and his hydraulics were shot out by a 37 millimeter hit. By the end of the fight, he'd outflown and gunned down 4 MiG-15s in a single engagement, a feat no other U.S. Navy pilot has pulled off. No other pilot, to my knowledge, has pulled off. Somehow he flew away alive after those 35 minutes in what some would describe as a swarm of faster, deadlier jets. Again, he came back to the carrier, landed it with 260 plus holes from 23 millimeter and 37 millimeter cannon fire, including a hit through the wing into the engine. And yet he still landed the aircraft aboard the ship instead of ditching. Now, y'all may not realize it, and a lot of people take it for granted because we have a few thousand pilots who are able to do it. Most of the pilots that fail out of the Navy as pilots is because they can't land on the carrier. It's not something that's a given. This was back then. This is brand new technology, going on and off the ship. Or not technology, but a new way of battling. So you had a aircraft limping, and he was still able to land it. So here's the kicker, though. All that hard work, he lands, they strip the jet, and the crew pushed the wrecked Panther overboard into the sea. It was too damaged to save. Tells you a lot about this man's fortitude. Now, my thought process is, man, boy, if only there had been some way to keep that plane and put it in a museum. That's every kid. I can see just every 6, 7-year-old kid looking at that plane in awe at American pride, at the ability to survive against all odds. So, why did this stay secret? Because he had been fighting Soviet pilots, not North Koreans or Chinese. The entire engagement was classified to avoid escalating the war with the USSR. Not Russia, mind you, but the USSR, a combination of communist countries all under the banner, with Russia being the dominant country ruling them all. So Williams was told never talk about it, and it stayed buried for decades until records were declassified after the Cold War. After the Cold War and after Russia fell, the Russian records confirmed the identities of the 4 Soviet pilots: Captain Belushkov, Captain Vandulov, Lieutenant Pahomkin, and Lieutenant Tarshinov. That's the best I can do with my Russian. Again, they were shot down in the fight, and the flight leader, Belashkov, died attempting to crash land back over Soviet territory. Now, the aftermath, the ramifications of this battle probably immediately made it all the way up to high command. And there was a lot to learn from it. But from the mental fortitude, from the American pilot's perspective, MiG Alley proved that U.S. pilots could outfly and outfight Soviet crews, even when the MiG 15 had some tech advantages. And what this did was feed a lasting confidence and swagger. I've never met a pilot in the Navy that didn't have confidence and swagger. They wear those Ray-Bans proudly. The US also took away that training, tactics, and teamwork, not just jets, were what let them dominate a very dangerous opponent. Now, this is important because this is what I think is the overall denigration, the destruction of our country today. We no longer teach the train to be great. We teach to be mediocre. Oh, yeah, you get a participation trophy too, little Joe. Oh, valedictorian, no, you cannot speak because it's going to make the average kids feel dumb. We no longer teach to strive to be great. We teach that it's okay to be mediocre. And there's a difference. The difference is easily seen in this battle. Mediocrity got 4 Russians killed. Greatness got Royce a Congressional Medal of Honor a few years too late. Now, this also called Moscow's bluff. Once it was clear that these Chinese and North Korean MiGs were really Soviet, the American attitude became, we'll beat your best even when you hide it. And that was a hard Cold War edge. Remember, we were on cloud nine. We had just saved the world. So all this was feed the ego in a positive way. I always tell people, whether it's a politician, whether it's a Tom Cruise style actor, whether it's a Navy SEAL, whether it's a Delta Force, whether it's a Rancho Santa Fe board member, you have to have that bit of arrogance to succeed at that level. And that's what came about in helping to create the mystique of our Navy pilots. So their mentality was, we'll beat your best even when you hide it. Or as Charlie Daniels would say, I'll take your bet because I'm the best there's ever been. Now, they had a reality check for the Soviet Union. The air war showed that U.S. forces were serious, were lethal, and could adapt. That World War II was not luck. And we did not win just because the Soviets were allied with us. It helped convince the Soviets that a full open war would be too risky to push forward. Now, the State of the Union, Democrats being Democrats. Again, Daryl Issa, a veteran himself, and Mike Rounds, another veteran, were pushing for Royce Williams' Medal of Honor throughout the Biden years. Now, the Navy, now remember, Obama fired all the war generals, the generals who believed in honor and integrity and training our troops to be the best of the best. And we had transgenders wearing the uniform. We had mediocrity set in. We had politics being the key to advancement as well as color, not the best of the best. So the Navy said, okay, yeah, whatever. We'll give them a Navy Cross. Think about it. You cannot sneer at a Navy Cross. That in and of itself is a Medal of Honor as well in an accomplishment. But this was 7-1. Never before has it been done. Took out 4 pilots and managed to land a plane that had to be scrapped because it was so damaged. And all you're talking about is the Navy Cross? The push to get in the actual Medal of Honor stalled in 2022. It took a change in law because there's like a 5-year limit, if I'm correct, on the Congressional Medal. There's a time frame. So it took a change in the law to make that happen, and Trump in the Oval Office to get it done. Biden had the case in front of him. His Pentagon knew the story, and they stopped at a Navy Cross. They had every opportunity to finish the job and give this man his due. And not that he was asking for it, but you recognize heroism. Heroes are something we all strive to be. As a young little kid, how many of us are on the plane in the yard? Oh, I want to be Franco Harris. I want to be Joe Montana. I want to be this, But a war hero, it's when you quietly look at that in awe, when you look at that person, even as an adult, and you're like, am I man enough to be in the same room with that guy? That's what we as males strive to be. But only when Congress carved out an exception and Trump was willing to pull the trigger did Royce Williams finally get the Medal of Honor he had earned 74 years ago. And with that, you now know the legend of Royce Williams, a 26-year-old United States Navy pilot who flew against all the odds and did not fight the battle because he was looking for glory. He fought the battle because he had to. So let's bring in our panel and let's get their thoughts on Royce Williams. Let's start with the G-Man. How you doing, G?
Doing well.
So your quick thoughts on Royce.
Well, to show what a hero he is, think about the fact that he did not receive the medal to avoid starting World War III.
Exactly.
And he was okay with that. For 74 years, he was okay with that.
All right.
And I think that deserves even a bigger medal in my mind. But no, well-deserved. I'm glad he finally got it. He's 100 years old. I mean, obviously he has fewer years ahead of him than he does behind him. So I was happy to see that. We actually met him here in Rancho Santa Fe. He came to our school about a year ago for an honor flight. jogathon to raise money for veterans to be flown to Washington D.C. along with some of our kids to celebrate their efforts in the military and to honor those efforts in the military. So I got to meet him briefly. It was like 2 minutes long, and there were a lot of other veterans, all Korean War and Vietnam War, and I think maybe one Desert Storm War. But yeah, I got to meet him briefly, and I'm so happy for him.
Annette, so both sides at the State of the Union, I looked this up. I don't want to make accusatory statements,
Of course not.
whether it's Royce or Tucker.
Never, never.
So both sides actually for Royce stood and applauded, but you could see her reports that the Democrats were smirking, they were rolling their eyes, and they were treating the moment like a political gag. Now, the following day, they were mocking all these medal recipients, and I get it from the point, okay, Trump's a masterful. He's like what do you call the circus guy, the ringmaster. He knows how to get everybody hyped up. But these are deserving medals. It's like these are feats that we only, as I said earlier, we as males dream of. Women swoon over, these type of men, you know. And do you see this as just partisan bitterness toward Trump? Or does it reveal a deeper Democrat discomfort with unapologetic American heroism and honor culture?
Well, I think that was the greatest moments of the night, actually. And the fact that he talks about people, tells their stories, because storytelling is so powerful. And what do I remember about the State of the Union were exactly those stories. This man is a part of, the greatest generation. And I actually think that that time of life, one of the qualities that a lot of men have that time was that sense of humility, which was why he was willing to wait. There was a lot more humility. There was a lot more, I think, camaraderie. There was a lot more pride in the United States. I think Trump's point was trying to bring that forth. I think that's why the hockey team was there. I
America first.
proud right, I think he's proud of the United States of America, and that the sense of pride is what I felt when he was receiving those honors, and I'm sure he felt that as well, and it was, long overdue, of course. I think the Democrats, they're very they're very prickly right now, and it showed how small they were. I don't know, I found that so distasteful and so anti-American. And to your point earlier when you were talking about heroes, I think we need some heroes right now. I think the kids need some heroes right now, and I think those kinds of stories aren't told enough.
Right, right. Gee, your thoughts on the Democrat reaction?
Yeah, I think part of it is maybe there's jealousy that President Biden and her husband Joe couldn't get it done when she was in office. I think that might be part of it because I want to believe Joe Biden. Talking seriously now, Joe Biden honors Americans, right? And he placated the left by pretending to be this uber left guy. But we know from most of his Senate run, he was actually somewhat liberal and had a
Somewhat.
lot of American values and honored the military. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and just put it on the law and just say the law had that statute of limitations and they couldn't pass the law in time for him to do it. And besides, I'm not sure an auto pen can put a ribbon around someone's neck.
You know, Biden's part of the old school, meaning you were still patriotic, but
Yeah.
Biden was too dementia riddled at the end and be making these type of decisions. And at that point in time, he was elected by the far left and expected to do far left stuff. So, and I truly believe in my heart, he was so dementia riddled. Had he not been, he would have gone nonsense. We're not going to do that, But then maybe he doesn't get elected. I think he was a perfect pawn at the perfect time for the Democrats. Now, in regards to patriotism, to what you
Mhm.
said, Annette, only 36% of Democrats say they're extremely or very proud to be American. And that was a Gallup poll from last year in June that came out. And I'm bringing this up because you brought up we need patriotic deeds. I always tell people I'm not an immigrant. Panama is not an immigrant country. Puerto Rico is not a country that where immigration, Puerto Ricans are born. But we are seeing along those lines. And I can tell you, if the United States falls, so does the world. And people always talk about American pride, about what's the term? Nationalism. Nationalism is good when it brings the country together
Yes, it is.
because this country is what has made the world a better place. This country is what has uplifted blacks, Latinos, Asians, whites, everybody from the poor. And if we lose that, then the world loses everything. And it starts with patriotism. If you're not patriotic towards this country, you're being patriotic towards China. Right now, they're more patriotic towards China, a communist nation that has a history of killing over 100 million people, of a current dictator. I don't know if he was in charge, but he was part of the communist regime back then of Tiananmen Square. So G, your thoughts on the lack of patriotism that we're seeing from Democrats?
I mean, I got enough to say during the State of the Union segment, but I'm worried for our country. Abraham Lincoln quoted Jesus saying, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." And what we saw during the State of the Union was a house divided against itself, and it's not because of the Republicans. It's because of, and I held my meter up, and
It was
this
off
is
the
my
charts.
TDS meter. It's broken now.
Yeah.
It broke during the speech.
Something I have to say, because I
Yes.
think and you said it many times before on the show, but I think I know what is a big contributing problem to this. You've talked about education, and I was talking about this at the board meeting last night because I've been reading the books that are offered in our middle school library because I read them with my daughter. And in every single one of them, no matter what the topic, William, there is a component about the book that makes sure to explicitly say that America is a racist and unwelcoming country. And I feel like when you plant those seeds in the hearts and minds of children, there's no way they're going to grow up defending this freedom, defending the reasons why we're here today. Where else would you want to live? I'm not saying it's a perfect place. I'm not saying the history is perfect. It is absolutely not perfect. We can talk about that all day long.
Nothing's perfect.
But
Nothing's perfect.
right, but there's nowhere better to live, and what's happening with these stories is because I think stories are powerful. Talked about a specific story about 9/11, and instead of focusing on heroism, like we're talking about right now, they focused on what happened after the towers fell
Mhm.
and how we were racist against the Muslims. That was the part of the story they wanted to talk about. I'm not saying it wasn't true. What I'm saying is there are many parts of that story to
Oh,
talk
it's not true in the context they put it in.
right, well,
You have
exactly.
to acknowledge your sins, but those sins. So, for
Yes,
example, when I was in
out of context.
he ran for state legislature, tall guy, I forget his name, and I had lunch with him, and he brought up the white nonsense, and I sat there and said, "Okay, that's fine. So, are you telling me those 500,000 white Americans that died during the Civil War we're all bad people? You're telling me the whites that were lynched after the war because they were helping blacks were evil people? Are you telling me the African kings that subjugated their enemy tribes and said, no, white man, you don't have to come into the interior. We're going to wait for you on the beach with all these slaves to sell you. We're good people? And they had no answer. And I tell them, my point isn't to denigrate any minority, but it's to bring the full truth. We have sins that
Mhm.
we have overcome. And
Yeah,
I'm sorry, get over it.
and admit it.
You know, we have sins, but we've overcome them.
Mhm.
Blacks have the highest rate of living than any other black in any other part of the country. In fact, the country in Africa just after said there will be no white models. They kill white Africans in South Africa. And my point isn't to bid it against white versus black. It's
Correct.
human nature. I'm getting ready to do a talk on another podcast on human nature. And human nature is what rules this world, not being good.
Okay, well, William, you know what? I have a great quote for you by a philosopher, and he said, "We are not born good, we're taught to be good." And I thought, "Oh, I've gotta say that to William because I think maybe I'm deconstructing my belief that we were all born good." So I think what you said is true. We're taught these things, and right now we are not planting seeds of patriotism in our children. We're planting
Exactly.
seeds of divisiveness and hatred toward our own country. Like G said, we're divided against ourselves.
Mhm. That's right. And heaven help these progressives if
Yeah.
conservatives ever start acting like them. We have the guns. We know how to use them. And I'm dead serious. I always
Mhm.
tell my wife, you shut down an urban city like Chicago, like New York City, they got to go out, pick them off like flies. I go, y'all don't want that. So we need to resolve these issues before we get into brother versus brother. All right. Let's talk about the State of the Union here. So Trump's 2026 State of the Union is both an election integrity offensive and it's a power struggle. He used a high impact, digitally dominant speech to demand the SAVE Act, expanded tariff authority, and a congressional stock trading ban, while one major post speech poll put his approval at 51% after the State of the Union. Voter ID and proof of citizenship requirements are backed by roughly 7 to 8 out of 10 Americans, including strong majorities in not multiple polls, but in every poll of Democrat voters. And what's that mean? It means party leaders are openly defying their own base on ballot security. And that is Mitch McConnell of the Republicans and every single Democrat. And that's what the SAVE Act is meant to do, bring back integrity into our elections. So the outcome now hinges on whether Senate Republicans will confront filibuster rules and internal splits as Democrats and advocacy groups attack the SAVE Act, and they're just flat out lying at calling that voter suppression. And we talked about this a couple of podcasts ago, or maybe the last podcast where I show you the video of how whites viewed blacks and how blacks were like, no, y'all we do need IDs, you know? So, so these advocacy groups attack the SAVE Act as voter suppression, all while polarized but energized audiences react in both polls and online to support it. So the reason I bring up the SAVE Act is that was probably the major component that he's pushing at the State of the Union, but he's going to face pushback. So let's start with the bill that could decide whether 2026 feels legitimate or rigged. The Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. Ooh, I kind of chopped that up. The Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, the SAVE Act, is designed to require documentary proof of U.S. citizenship when registering to vote in federal elections. You would think that's common sense, you know? So my first question to you guys is, if we've never done a real nationwide audit of election fraud, and we only count the tiny slice that gets caught and prosecuted, because everybody talks about the Heritage Foundation. Well, they've only documented 136 cases. Well, we have a long history of machine corruption and voter suppression, going back to the founding, going back to suppressing and keeping blacks from voting, going back to literally JFK getting elected with the dead vote. That's why you get the jokes. My dad's 93. He's not going to be here much longer. He's like, son, help me. I don't want to vote Democrat when I die. So we're seeing more and more modern cases as well from fake addresses. Nick Shirley just discovered many homes with over 100 people registered there to vote, P.O. boxes, which is illegal, with dozens of people registered to each P.O. box. So what does it say that Democrat leaders and activists still insist that fraud is rare and call the SAVE Act a burden? Annette.
They just think they're never gonna win again. Honestly, that was the best video ever that you showed us. They all said the same thing, basically. Like, what do you mean? Of course I have an ID. I know exactly where I need to go. I don't mind showing it at all. I was just like, what other sort of he randomly was selecting people just to sort of get their thoughts about it. I just think that they think it's curtains for them if that's what we do. They're not going to win another election. That's their worry. That's why they want to make it seem like it's wrong or racist, or it takes, certain groups of people, it discounts them in some way. And it's great talking points, quite honestly, because some people do feel disenfranchised and they're speaking to the people who might feel that way.
And for those of you wondering, the video is by Ami Horowitz, where he goes
He was great.
to college students out in Berkeley. But I think it's Berkeley, New York. Maybe I assumed it was Berkeley out here, but I can't remember. But then he goes to Harlem.
Yeah, he was on the East Coast.
With
Yeah.
all the white people, ranging from young college kids to the young adults, way too stupid to know how to vote. So we got to help them. Am I exaggerating, guys? Isn't that what it boiled down to that they were saying?
They felt insulted. You could tell they were
Yes.
insulted.
Then he went to Harlem and showed the video in Harlem. And I say it every time. My favorite spot is the guy, is this candid camera? How unrealistic. So, gee, as a brown man,
Wait, what?
7 to 8 out of every 10 American, including Democrats, want voter ID and proof of citizenship. So aren't Democrats effectively telling their own voters to sit down and shut up, boy?
Yes. So even Chuck Schumer was interviewing, and I think it was CNN or whatever that new MSNBC.
MS Now.
MS Now. I guess nothing but Bill Clinton ran its course. But yeah, so Chuck Schumer was actually challenged by the host, I believe it was CNN, and said, well, 7 out of 10 of your own voters actually want this. And he goes, well, yeah, but it's Trump, and they're going to do fraud, or they're going to suppress the vote and all that, and so we don't want that because it's Trump. Well, no, they're just kicking can down the road, because we all know that politicians, they're just temporary employees of the government, right? voted in by us for 2 years, in the case of House of Representatives, 6 years as a senator, or 4 years as a president. And all you have to do is kick the can down the road, and when you do that, things don't get passed for decades
That's
because you
right.
gotta get that synergy back, right? It's just like a NFL football team. If you don't have the right players at the right time and you miss the one little field goal at the end of the year, you might not come back to the Super Bowl for 20 years. So it's that type of thinking here. And going back to your, they can only prove 36 cases. How do you prove voter fraud? How do you prove that someone who casted a ballot could legally cast it? I mean, the ballot's casted, and how do you take back that ballot? That guy could say, oh, I voted for Trump. Oh, okay, -1 for Trump. You shouldn't have voted, so -1 for Trump, when he actually voted for Kamala. So that's actually a +2 for Kamala, right? So one, you can't prove it. Yeah, so I think that whole thing is just ridiculous. But two, the ballot harvesting in California is off the rails. So now some guy comes in with 2,000 ballots and says, boom, here you go. I got a bunch of voters for you. And all they do is say, well, match the signatures. I mean, we got what, 36 million votes in California, or maybe it's less than that, but how many people do you have checking signatures? I
That's
mean,
right.
that's a
Right.
tough thing to do. And my
Gee,
signature is just my signature is just a squiggle.
G's a wannabe doctor, people. Gee, uh, question. We talked about Chuck Schumer, but what about Mitch McConnell? That bum, that useless excuse, that man who sold us out over and over, the man who every 4 years, I'm a conservative, waving his gun around and then votes with the Democrats half the time. He doesn't want this. He says this is nonsense.
Well, okay, so the stated reason is we don't want to break the filibuster because that's our special thing in the Senate, right? He has a point there. Now, I think they should just do it and save America, because once you've failed at making our elections happen with integrity, then it's just going to get worse and worse.
Right.
But let me bring you back to Obama's days, and they broke the filibuster for approving all these judges. What happened in response? Trump was able to get 3 Supreme Court justices in without needing 60 votes. And so the filibuster thing backfired on the Democrats in the long term. And now I think the Republicans are rightfully, I think they should consider, well, if we break the filibuster, how does this backfire on us? So
It
fine, look
will.
at that, but this is worth it. This issue is worth it.
I agree. I agree. All right. So if you think this is just about catching illegals voting, wait until you hear who says the Safe Act can stop millions of citizens from voting too. So on paper, it's citizens only. In practice, opponent says it's paperwork as a weapon. So the Brennan Center argues that the Save Act could block millions of eligible Americans by requiring documents many low-income voters and people of color do not easily have. And to the audience, we kind of talked about that already. That what they're saying is blacks are too stupid, Latinos are too stupid, and they tossed in the elderly are too invalid to be
How
able to
about
get
us Indians?
birth
Does
certificate.
that mean us too? I'm
You guys own the
asking
tech.
for a friend.
You guys have the tech side, so you guys already set up the vote, you know. But so real quick, 10 seconds each, because we kind of rehashed this point. Why do you think Democrat minorities accept being called? This is a serious question. I don't mean the Democrat, I don't mean to mock it, but at what point does a Democrat go, what the hell? I'm not stupid, man. I have ID. At what point? And the reason I'm talking about Jasmine Crockett, I'm talking about the squad, the AOC, it's not just black, but AOC. You know, at what point do they go, enough? The people want this, we're going to pass it. 10 seconds, G, then and that.
No, I mean, it's a lot of them are one issue voters, and I'll ask a Democrat, and I might not know they're a Democrat. Do you agree with this? Yeah, 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 yeah. So you must be Republican. No, I'm a Democrat. So they're one issue people, right? So there's some other issue that makes them vote Democrat, and it's not the voter ID thing.
Annette. So
I think I just think it triggers something within people when they hear that they're being treated unfairly. You know, they're working that angle. It's unfair. It's unfair. And then again, I think because we are emotional people, people want that sense of justice and fairness, and they actually start to believe. You know, what is that saying? The bigger the lie, the more people believe it. I actually think that that rings true sometimes. I think some people do believe there is. And so you have their politicians who keep on driving that message. You're not going to be able to vote. It's going to be unfair for you. And they
yeah,
start,
no.
I mean, I think that there is some power in that.
No, there is. There is. You tell a lie, you tell a story long enough, people will believe it's true. Now, let me ask you on McConnell. McCain's is McConnell a songbird McCain style move? Personal hatred of Trump, pettiness and ego getting put ahead of Americans who overwhelmingly want voter ID. I mean, Democrats are calling this Jim Crow 2.0, and he's well, he's out of it now anyway. He's like, honestly, McConnell's like Biden. He really is. I mean,
Yeah.
they said they're stand still to pose. 3 hours later, he's still standing still. But he's always hated Trump. So
Yeah.
is he putting his office putting his hatred of Trump over doing the right thing here?
I mean, of course he is, and he's like a textbook for term limits, honestly.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. People forget him and a whole crew of people of Nancy Pelosi, McConnell, Gingrich, all those people came up at the same time. And he's worth a couple $1 billion that people don't realize, mostly because of his wife and her Chinese ties to China still, and her family's money. But these are people who they're lords. They view themselves as lords. So this bill is loaded. The question now is, do Republicans have the stomach to actually fight for it in the Senate? This is where principle meets power. Trump has 51% approval outside DC, but there's a 60-vote filibuster. And G was talking about earlier. So on the outside, Trump's riding high right now. 51% of the people approve of it. But inside Congress, he has that 60-vote filibuster he can't seem to overcome. The House has already passed the SAVE Act. The institutional fight is now entirely in the Senate. And as G said a few minutes ago earlier, that, look, the filibuster, that's our prestige. We're the Senate. You little peon congressmen, we're the big dogs. So Republicans hold 53 seats in the Senate, and they have more than 50 votes in favor of the bill, but they lack the 60 votes needed to break a Democrat filibuster, which is the immediate reason the bill is stalled. Now, the filibuster was not always there, so I have a tough time. I struggle with that, and I really think, Annette, you're right. If we had term limits, we wouldn't even need the filibuster. But my question to you, Annette, is with 53 Republican senators, 50-plus votes for the SAVE Act, for the 60-vote filibuster wall, and then you have leaders like Thune and McConnell refusing to touch Senate rules, and some of it's legit, while the base demands action. MAGA is saying, "What you doing, fool?" Well, what's it saying? Which side are you on, Annette? Are you on the staunchy, grown, old, wrinkly white man? Or are you with MAGA?
Well, I'm with MAGA on this one. I'm not always. You know that.
Yes, that is true.
You know that I'm not always, but definitely on this. You know, I have a question for
Hold
you.
on, Annette. Hold
Okay,
on.
sorry.
So what you're saying is they should toss the filibuster. Because my real question to you, both of you, is
Filibuster?
where do you stand on the filibuster and the norms? Should that be tossed aside and pushed through the election integrity reforms, or keep the filibuster, or is there a third option? That's
But
really
my question, I have a question about that to you because I was going to ask it when you brought it up a second ago. Didn't you just say that if we do get rid of the filibuster, there's going to be some sort of blowback also?
always is. Life
Yeah.
is politics runs in cycles. One
Yeah.
day the Republicans are riding high, 10 days the Democrats are,
Yeah,
And
no, I
so
get it.
everything what goes around comes around. However,
Sure.
as G said, I'll give you guys my answer. As I'm okay if they kill it. Because if they pass this, we're going to have election integrity, and a lot of those Democrats are going to have to come back to the middle if they want to get elected, because the fraud won't be able to be done as easily. So I'm willing to live with that, but the filibuster has done some good.
Like
But
you were saying.
I'm also under the premise is this will force these damn candidates to go into blue districts to campaign, and that's how you win the battle. If you went to the barrio and started showing that Ami Horowitz video, you damn well know those Latinos are gonna be, "What you talking about, Willis?" and start voting Republican.
Yeah.
Gee, where do you stand as a brown man? I'm kidding. I'm just bragging. Where do you stand on this? Kill
Well,
it, filibuster, or what's your solution?
yeah, no, I think it's worth it. And
Mhm.
all you have to do is look back to when Ronald Reagan made the biggest mistake of his presidency and did amnesty. And the
Yeah.
reason why I say that is because now you just have you don't know what happened to the electoral process. Ever since then, I think George H.W. Bush's election looked good, but every other election past that, it's a 50-50 nation in terms of votes. And I'm not sure that that's reflects the American populace, right? So something happened to the votes where, I mean, presidents were overwhelmingly by 40 states or more elected. I think Jimmy Carter and Ford was the one exception. Overwhelmingly, ever since the JFK and Nixon election. And then all of a sudden it's 50-50 and everything's done by the margins. And then, you know, in 2020, they said shut down all the voting centers in the swing states. Oh, we're too tired to count right now. Come back in the morning, and all of a sudden Biden's ahead. Wait, what?
Uh,
What happened there? Oh,
Yes, you're
there's
right.
too much
That's
stuff.
good though.
Yeah,
That's good to see. The public's
yeah,
like, I don't know how
yeah.
to critically think, but even that looks funny to me there.
Right. So yes, the court said you couldn't. The Trump administration could not prove that there's voter fraud, and that's true because you can't prove it. How do you prove it?
yeah.
You got
Right,
millions and
right, right.
millions of ballots, and
Real
how do
quick,
you?
G.
You
R-
can't trace it.
Do you remember what Jamie Miller said? Tell the audience what Jamie Miller said. Remember, Jamie Miller worked on the 2000 uh, scandal in Florida, the recount. Remember what he said, G?
I mean, he said a lot on our
What he
podcasting.
said is, as they were counting, they realized they had to stop the count because Democrats were succeeding in getting every Tom, Dick, and Harry ballot counted as a Democrat. To give you one example, and we saw all this on video, somebody voted for a couple of Democrats, but they did not vote for president. They left it blank. So the ballot counter goes, well, he must have meant the vote for Gore. So they counted it as a Gore vote. And that's when Jamie Miller realized, and the Republicans realized, they're getting these ballots into the system. And once they're in the system, we can't pull them out. Even though technically we can challenge it, they know they would lose because it's in the system. So it's to the audience is what G is saying. Once that vote is in the system, it's in the system.
But
so you can't
it's even
prove
worse
voter
than that.
fraud till after the fact. And G, they do that by looking at the full ballot counts. Whoa, we have 110% voting in this district. You know, it's surpassing. It's like you only get about 40% of people to vote. Now you got 110% voted. That's when you realize something's fishy. Or as G, you said, in one second, flipped from Trump's leading by 100,000, and now he's behind by 30,000, just enough to win. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that in 2020, here's the. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Okay, so here's what happened in 2020 that was different. Whenever you have an election, and I think we should do away with absentee ballots except for very rare occasions, and that we should all show up in person. But what happens is you get requests for absentee ballots. So let's say San Diego County has 4 million voters, and we know that 1 million of them vote absentee.
Right.
So if you get 1,000,003 ballots, you must know, okay, some of those were fraudulent because only 1 million were requested, right? But in the 2020 election, every single person was counted as an absentee ballot voter. So now all you have to do is say, well, the turnout's only 60%, but the ceiling's really high. So we can just get a bunch of ballots and maybe they're pre-filled out or whatnot. And there's no way you can prove it. Again, the media is right. It's not proven because you can't prove it. Just get someone to fill that out in the back room and then bring it in at 2 a.m. because everything's shut down. Because I think one excuse was a sewer pipe was leaking and it smelled like crap.
A pipe burst, they said in Georgia.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, well, we can't count anymore. All you Republicans go home. We're all going home too. Shh, you hide in the closet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, remember G2 in Philadelphia and other areas, they put up boards so you couldn't see inside, and they kicked the Republicans out. And when the Republican lawyer said this is illegal, what did the cops say? Well, you got to get a lawyer and go to court. We needed to get the point. No, we get our own people. And we just storm it. We will be in there, and then it becomes a big issue. Well, let's let the courts decide it now. Those
but here's the thing. For any Democrat watching, you're saying this has not been proven. True, you can't prove it. And that's the problem. You cannot prove that there's fraud because there's no traceability to who voted.
Right.
So let's get rid of the absentee ballot issue except for military and disabled and the elderly.
It's not just that. It's electronic voting. They have now proven they can be hacked. You know, so we're proving the mechanisms are flawed. And that's why there's no trust on either side. That's
who brought that to the forefront? It was Hillary Clinton and the Democrats.
Yeah. All right, let's keep moving here. We're already way past time here. So, election law isn't the only fight Trump just dumped in Congress's lap, Annette. Fox flagged 2 other big State of the Union ash from Trump. Well, not Fox, but we saw it as well. Watching it. Banning Nancy Pelosi's favorite pastime, Congressional stock trading. And also shielding his new terror plan, which is pitched as a replacement for the income tax. And for the audience, At one time, we didn't pay income taxes because of tariffs. I love tariffs. If I don't want that high priced whiskey, I'll buy the American that's $1, $2 cheaper. So, and then I don't have to pay taxes. I'm good with that. And then
Yes.
tariffs. We have Republicans who are fighting us on the tariff suit. We're not a united party. Now, Kevin Kiley is one of those. Now, Kevin Kiley is here in California. He's an up and coming, good looking guy. Problem is, there he is. Politics. I mean, looks is believe it or not a big chunk of the battle. But his problem is he's white. No, I'm kidding. He's white. That's how Democrats view the problem.
Hillary Clinton and Kamala? Okay.
Yeah. So, but he's a Trump ally, but he's in a deep blue state, and he's trying to fight and support America First terrorists with voters and donors who still worship theoretical free trade, or they're Democrats and just lie about how all this works. So, how does he handle this without becoming just another DC weather vane by weather vane, just flipping and flopping? But before you answer that, there's also Thomas Massey. And he's just straight up ideological anti-terror purist with full-blown TDS. You know, and he's alongside McConnell, who believes in Songbird McCain and putting personal hatred of Trump over the base's economic and sovereignty agenda. That's Thomas Massey. So what should the Thomas Massey you can ignore? I just brought Thomas Massey up to show the audience that's what we're dealing with as well. But Kylie's in a tough spot. How would you handle it? Put your consulting cap on. How does the Republican Party handle a Kylie type situation?
Wait, because what's bothering me about this is, how come you're not even talking about the Supreme Court decision?
This is State of the Union topic we're talking about.
I know, but the Supreme Court just said that a lot of these tariffs are illegal.
This is supporting. No, they didn't say they're illegal. They said Trump doesn't have the power to carry them out. Congress has the power, and that's what I'm referring to. Getting Congress to pass this and give Trump support, the power to do this, is not likely to happen. And it's not just the Democrats. He's facing battles within his own party in doing this.
I thought what Trump said, William, tell me if I'm wrong, was that he was going to go forward with it anyway, regardless.
Well, there are other options he can use that are more hoops to jump through, but can get it done versus how he was doing it.
He was doing it through IEEPA, which is a statute that says in the case of national security, you can impose tariffs on other countries. But the problem was he slapped it on every country. So not every country had a national. Yeah. So there are other sections he can use of the code. I think 241 or something. Don't quote me on that. But
730, 230, stuff like that.
Yeah. That he could impose these on. And the Congress actually has the constitutional authority, but they delegated that to the president a long, long time ago. So now under these statutes, he can impose tariffs. But that could go to the Supreme Court too. And that could take years to work through all that. And by then, Trump's out of office, right?
Well, those are clear. What happened was Trump was abusing it. Let's be honest. I was with it, but Trump was abusing it. So I have mixed feelings, meaning deep down, I wish Trump could keep the power. But let's be honest. What if it'll never happen? It'll never happen, but think of President AOC.
Right, exactly. No, that's
But I'll give my opinion on this. I just think that, okay, so I'm a free trade guy. I am not in favor of tariffs, but more than a free trade guy, I'm a fair trade guy. So if a country has tariffs on us, then we should have tariffs on them.
Right.
And hopefully they find religion and go, okay, I'm going to remove the tariffs on you so we can bring it all down, right? But ideally, and maybe call me a globalist, but I think if we have free trade between countries, I want my bananas to not have extra money, cost extra money. Coffee, we can't grow that here in America, right? So what are we exporting? iPhones. Okay, well, our iPhones become more expensive to them, but they can't afford it even at zero tariffs in many countries. So they buy the used ones. So I'm all for free trade, but I'm more for fair trade. So that's where I say, well, Trump, fight the good fight. Let's get all of these tariffs down. That's just not his style. But you know what? We'll get to the end of his term, and the next president will decide what to do. It's not going to be the same.
So I got to push back, G. You're like, I'm a free trade guy, but I'm more of a fair trade guy. Gee, we've never had free trade in this world. Never has there ever been free trade. In fact, Big John, when he came on the show one time, we got into it, and I said, free trade isn't just our shores. It's free trade going back and forth in the country. Big John, his libertarian belief which was ignorant, was, well, I don't care about them. I care about the cost here. Well, that's not free trade. That's
Right.
not open free trade. That was
Right.
jump
No,
right
no,
into with the argument.
I
And
agree,
my
but
point is, we don't have that. We don't have free trade.
we've had free trade with certain countries where it was zero on both sides. So we've had that. But I'm saying, yeah, as an ideal.
That's the rarity.
Right, yeah. I'm just saying that's the ideal. We'll
But
never
he's
be there,
running
but we
for president on that idea. So his free trade
We
idea.
see how that worked for Ron Paul and Justin Amash, and how it's gonna work for Thomas Massey here.
yeah.
All right, so let's get to the stock ban. All right.
Okay, I can talk about that.
So the stock ban, separate from the intra GOP drama. What's it going to take to actually force Congress to pass a real stock trading ban on itself? Because they all got up and clapped. Even Nancy Pelosi clapping like a seal, but then she's going to turn right around and she's going to act like the person feeding the seal. Oh, jump in the lake. We're not approving that. I'm worth 200 million now after being worth 700,000 when I came into Congress. You know, so they're not going to vote for it, even though they say. How do you get Congress to vote for that? Give me your pitch, Annette.
God, I don't see you're gonna be able to do that, William. And by the way, I mean, they'll just find ways around it anyway, honestly. And
Oh, yes, but if it's illegal, they have to pay a they can get arrested and go to jail. If it's illegal, they can get arrested and go to jail.
but as another aside, you know, they benefit in so many ways from being in office. Trump himself is benefiting in so many ways from being in office, as is his family.
Trump
I
doesn't take a salary, not
I
one salary.
know that,
Trump
but
put all his stuff into blind assets. Now, Democrats will tell you, well, this, well, that, nothing's perfect. But
how
Trump has actually put his all his money into blind assets. He's done more to follow the rules, including when a judge for a third time says you can't deport illegals, even though the Supreme Court said he already could. You know,
what
he
about
has
his
followed the law.
Bitcoin? What about his Bitcoin?
What I don't know. I haven't followed that part, but
And no,
what
and what about his children who opened up that bar in DC and just like a $750,000 like it's almost like to be in that club, you've got to pay. I mean, I think they're finding ways.
well, hold on though. These are billionaires. That's the world they operate in.
I
Patrick Bet David just opened up a cigar lounge. He's worth a couple hundred million. I can't afford to go in there and have a drink or anything. Certain things are built for the rich.
well,
Right?
that's my point exactly.
But he's not using the government to enrich himself, is my point. Insider stock trading is just that. They hear Intel's got
Oh
to
my
run
gosh,
this by the government to get permission. This is going to affect their stock this way. Hey, Pa, Mrs. Pelosi,
William,
here's what's happening.
you sound
Focus on
very
that.
naive right now. You actually, for the first time ever, sound very naive. You don't think that Goldman Sachs is doing insider stock trading? It's happening every single damn day. They do it every single time.
None of that's see, what you're saying is everybody does it, so Congress should do it. That's what you're advocating for right now
Don't lie.
because you don't have an answer. How do you
Okay.
see the question is how do you get Congress to pass it? But because you can't figure out a way, you're saying, well, they all do it, so it's okay. No, it's not okay. It's not okay. And the SEC has punished the Goldman Sachs before for insider trading. Can they get everybody? No. 80% of murders are not solved. Spoiler alert. But that doesn't mean you don't go try to solve them. Same thing with any crime. What you are advocating right now is they all do it, so I don't have an issue.
No, I didn't say that. I
You
did not.
didn't say that, but that's
I
pretty much what you're
I
implying.
said I think it's worthless. I think it's but I guess good make the college try for it. I just don't
Gee.
think
Yeah,
it's
I get it. I get it. I get it. Gee.
No, I mean, take the vote on it before the midterms and hammer on it and use Nancy Pelosi. Pelosi Gate is whether she stood up during this part, right, with Elizabeth Warren, and apparently she said on camera she did stand up,
CNN, yeah.
and other people are saying she didn't, but whatever. Yeah, and then use her as a poster child of, look, $200,000 a year salary times what was she in 20 years, 30 years?
She got in the late 90s and she came in worth about
Okay.
700,000.
Yeah, so that's like 10 million. So how do you go from $10 million worth of salary to 300 million? She must have known something and bought some stocks based on insider information, and that's what we're talking about here.
That's right. And you know, this is easy. I'm with G. The midterms. See, it has since the dawn of time, power has changed hands through the caste system. Those that have it, those that don't. The French Revolution is probably the most well known. Let them eat cake. Off with their heads is what was the result of that. So you show those mansions, you show that lavish living, you show Senor Newsom at the French Laundry and saying they did all this through insider trading.
But what I will say is I don't think Annette was saying that just let them do it. I think what she was saying is that it's always going to happen. The difference here is you're going to prevent congressmen from being able to open trades on or buy or sell anything. Basically, that would be a crime for them to do that. So
look, if
that
it's a
way,
law, there are
you
ramifications.
can't prevent like insider information. How are you going to
Look,
say you knew this beforehand or not? Like you need to have traceability.
Easy. You investigate. You get witnesses. The SEC does this.
It's too easy to fake. It's too easy to fake.
You don't know that. See,
Piece of
both of you
shit.
guys are
No,
saying
all
you're not
I'm
gonna
saying
stop
is
it.
just prevent Congress or actually any congressperson or president from trading at all. They can't trade. Period.
And you
That's
put it in a
a cleaner
black
way of
list.
doing it. That's a cleaner way of doing it.
It doesn't matter how you do it. There's 10 zillion ways to do it. The point is you got to get the law passed, and Congress is refusing to pass that law. You know?
Don't people cheat on their taxes though, William? I sort of look at it.
And if they get caught, they go to jail, don't they? It's illegal. There's a law. You can't cheat. There's a law. You can't have insider trading. What you were in,
around it.
what's that?
It just like you when talk about the system and let them eat the cake and the wealthy and the poor, it's still the same way. That's what's so frustrating about it, and that's what people really want to see change.
I'm laughing because once I'm like, yeah, you're right in it. You're 100% right. It's called human nature.
Okay.
It's one of the 7 sins. It's called greed.
Yeah.
You know?
Evidently,
And then you laughed at me and say, no, that's not what it is. We're all born good.
Okay, I told you I'm deconstructing my philosophy.
You're going through withdrawals right now.
Okay.
All right. So, so how you're wondering how all this landed with the money guys in the markets? CNBC laid it out. So here's how the speech looks when you follow the money. CNBC structured its analysis around 5 key takeaways: worker policy, inflation, domestic priorities, Iran, and political stakes. So the discussion, okay, so remember that here. What they structured it around was worker policy, inflation, domestic priorities, Iran, and political stakes. So my question to you guys is, there was an emphasis on domestic economic and political issues. He really didn't talk much about foreign policy. You know, he mentioned Iran briefly, but he pretty much stuck to the domestic issue. So is this Trump clearly pivoting into campaign mode, signaling that the cost of living, inflation, and immigration are the core issues he wants 2026 judged on? Now, looking at CNBC's 5 takeaways: new government-backed retirement plan, victory over inflation claim, domestic first focus, hardline on Iran, and the 2026 midterm stakes. Is there anything in that mix you think he nailed, oversold, or totally missed from a policy or markets perspective? Gee, you're the economic guy.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so the idea that inflation is falling is true. We don't have deflation overall. We do have deflation in some areas, but you know, we're at basically nominal inflation that we hope to have which is 2% every year. So is there victory there? Yes, there is. Did Trump do it? I'll be honest, I don't know that that's the case. I think it's just a lot of people are losing their jobs. But the job creation had an uptick last month, which was great. So what I will say is it still remains to be seen, but in the end, like people are going to vote their pocketbooks, and it doesn't matter what kind of inspirational take you put on it in the State of the Union. This is 10 months from now, 11 months from now, 10 months from now when the election is. So if someone has been out of a job for a year, they're going to vote for the other guy. I mean, that's just the case. So, let's get the job creation in there. And the problem is also AI. Like AI really is taking jobs away. Like if I want to create a image for my startup business, I don't need to hire a graphic artist for $300 to create a logo. I just go to AI and just say, no, tweak this, tweak that, tweak that. In 10 minutes, I got a great logo. So now I'm not paying that $300 to that guy. Where is he going to make his money from? So a lot of people are losing jobs, which is true, not because of Trump, but because we're technologically progressing.
Right. Manufacturing is coming back, but it takes time to get factories built and get the jobs. I think they're going to try to get a push on that. Scott Bessent, you're going to see him more and more on the circuit talking about this, and I look forward to hearing those. All right, let's move on here to our next topic. Let's close this out. So the SAVE Act has become the central test of whether Trump's 51% post-State of the Union approval claimed broad support for proof of citizenship. What I'm trying to say is Trump wants the SAVE Act pass. He's got 51% approval. He set record-setting digital numbers, but can he overcome the Senate filibuster rules? The warnings of Democrats screaming Jim Crow 2.0. That's the battle post the State of the Union. And how Republicans navigate the filibuster, their internal splits over tariffs, and the resistance to restraining congressional stock trading will determine whether this State of the Union marks a genuine turning point in election law and congressional power, or simply the opening barrage of 2026 campaign. In other words, as G said, we don't know how this State of the Union will play out, but we're going to find out sooner than later at this point. Hey everybody, this is William Del Pilar, founder of Grumblings Media, and I want to say thank you for watching our content. If you want to support our all-volunteer efforts at Grumblings Media, smash the subscribe button right here. 100% free, and please consume and share our great content. Click either one of these two boxes for more of our work.